Episode number 97, IRONMAN Lake Placid with Kathleen Murray. Welcome to the pursuit of the perfect race. I'm Coach Terry Wilson, and with each episode, I bring stories of athletes to you that share their experiences at races in order for you to learn how to have your perfect race. You will hear stories from athletes of all ages, abilities, and races of all distances. So regardless of where you fit in, there's something in it for you. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let the pursuit begin. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the pursuit of the perfect race. Today I have the pleasure of talking with Kathleen Murray about her recent race experience at IRONMAN Lake Placid in beautiful upstate New York, where she had a personal record time of 11 hours, 4 minutes, and 46 seconds. This race took place on July 22nd, 2018, with the temperature being 46 and rising to 79, and the water temperature was 74 degrees. Also notable to mention was this year's race had pouring rain and hail as well on the bike. Welcome to the show, Kathleen. I look forward to hearing about your race experience at IRONMAN Lake Placid.
Oh, thanks for having me, Terry.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to this. It's always been a good race to hear about, and I was there last year. Unfortunately, I wasn't there this year, and I look forward to diving into this. So what made you want to do this race?
Well, so last year was my first Ironman experience ever. A friend of mine, we decided to choose Lake Placid just because it's such an iconic Ironman. It's within driving distance of Philadelphia, where I'm from. And as soon as I found out it was going to be the 20th anniversary, I said to myself, I have to come back to Lake Placid. So, I mean, it's gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful venues. You have excellent views the entire race. The crowd is unbelievable. They're in it 100%, and they really help push you along.
Okay. Now, do you have a previous background in any of the three sports?
Growing up, I was a swimmer for years. Can't say I had any biking experience or running experience whatsoever. I was a big swimmer, but I actually hadn't been in a pool since I was about 15 years old.
Really?
16 years old. Yeah. Until I came back to the sport of triathlon.
Wow.
But I was a fairly strong swimmer, set to go to the Olympics, and I chose not to, just because I didn't want to give school up, high school.
Okay. So going into this race, how was your training?
It's kind of interesting. Like I said, this was only my second Ironman. I felt my first Ironman, I almost felt like I trained harder. But I think that was just my perception. My coach and I really were working on my running. I had a couple races where, I'd come out, pretty good in the swim, decent on the bike, and then I'd start to kind of fall back on the run. Goal in the off season was definitely to work on the run, ran a marathon, qualified for Boston, really put the time into the run, actually enjoy it a lot more. But I felt like the training was super manageable. Probably about the same as last year, just maybe the intensity was definitely increased for certain things, more focused on, intervals and power this season.
Okay. So who's your coach?
I'm using Todd Wiley. He's had a lot of success here in Lake Placid. I know he was an amateur who I think completed the course fairly quickly in his heyday. He was a pro. He's a local guy. It's great to have access to him. The thing I enjoy about Todd is he takes the type A triathlete in me and kind of calms me down. I always say he's like the yin to my yang. He doesn't focus on numbers or times. He's really kind of teaching me to race by feel. And how to make adjustments during the race according to what's going on, which, I think it's more important. It's a little bit more of an organic style versus, make sure you're hitting X, Y, and Z in the race, because anything can happen on race day. This yesterday taught me that you have to make the adjustments. It's pouring rain. You can't go bombing down Keene at 55 miles an hour. Race smart. Don't you see numbers, you hear numbers, you get those in your head. And if you're not hitting them, it can really put you in a bad mental space. And it's a long day to not feel good about your race.
Okay. Now, going into this race, what was the longest swim, bike, and runs that you completed?
I completed, my longest swim would have been about 40, I think it was 4,000 yards. My longest bike was 105 miles. Longest run, 20, I believe. You know, I think I was running 4 to 5 times a week. You know, getting comfortable at doing 16 and 17 miles. That was probably about the bread and butter of my running. Biking, bread and butter was probably about 80 to 90 miles, you know, getting comfortable at that distance. And swimming was probably about 3,600.
Okay. Now, did you do a lot of strength training in your program?
Good question. Last year, I didn't know how to strength train for a triathlon. You know, I thought about power movements, what we think of typical lifting inside of a gym. This season, I switched it up with advice from one of my coach's strength training partners. We really worked on functional movements. It was difficult for me to get used to that, honestly, because I think we're type A. At least I am. I always want to push the most, you know, really build the muscle. But the focus was definitely on functional movements. And my body just felt better this season. It has been feeling great. No injuries, no nagging pains. My back is strong. My core is strong, really focusing on core and back.
Okay. Now, in your training, were you doing a lot of bricks?
I do bricks probably about only once a week. I don't do a ton of bricks. I do them usually on my long rides, you know, right after my long rides, just to get used to it. Sometimes earlier in the season, I was doing more power interval on the bike and getting off and doing a brick. But that kind of fell off there toward the tail end once we got in the season. Just using the long rides and short run afterwards, no more than 5 miles or 45 minutes.
Okay. Now, with all of your training that you were doing going into Lake Placid this year, what type of nutrition were you using during the bike rides and during the runs?
So again, I kind of switched it up this season. Last year, I was doing a mixture of, I would say, solids and liquids. This season, I went all liquids. I'm on Team Infinite, so I was using Infinite Nutrition, and I really kind of settled. I know I didn't have enough calories in my last Ironman, so that kind of came back and bit me during the run. I carried 2 bottles with me, 2 bottles of Infinite on the bike. Each bottle was roughly 900 calories, consuming 1 bottle per loop. So I finished both bottles. I felt really strong. I didn't feel any fading. It has all my carbs, has all my magnesium and salt and everything in it. I felt great. I mean, I felt good. I figured I was using Gatorade's endurance gels. So just gels and whatever I wanted on course, whatever my body felt like it needed. But, I really kind of stuck to the Gatorade endurance gels that I carried myself. And just had some water on the run, Coke down there toward the end, cause that always tastes good. After you're out there.
Now,
after you're out there.
How many calories per hour were you wanting to get?
I got a little lazy on the bike, honestly, because it was a little colder. It was a little cooler out there, especially during the rain. So I think it was easier not to take it. I was kind of struggling to get that first bottle down in the 56, honestly. So I knew I had to, kind of force myself to drink a little more. Roughly probably 200 to 300 calories per hour is what I was aiming for.
Okay. Now, whenever you take a look at your training over the past 12 to 15 weeks, what was the most hours per week that you maxed out at?
Maxed out around 17 hours.
17 hours. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you have a full-time job as well?
Mm-hmm. Oh, do I? I'm an operating room nurse. So
okay.
Though I work 3 days a week, however, my work hours are 11 a to 11:30 p.m.
Oh, wow.
So I work till almost midnight. So any day that I work and train, it's a 20-hour day. So I do 2 20-hour days back to back, have a day off. Well, no, I'm sorry. I work Tuesday, then I have a day off. And then I do 20 hours back to back, Thursday, Friday. And then I go on my long ride Saturday and my long runs on Sunday. So, yeah. So from Thursday to Sunday can be difficult. I usually average about 4 to 6 hours of sleep during that time. It's difficult. My job requires call time as well. So there were nights, my last big build, for example, I was on call. I had to work overnight. So I did 100 miles in the morning, worked 11P to 7A, went home, got 4 hours of sleep, and then got up to do a 20-mile run.
Wow.
Yeah. In like 98 degree heat. So, it was tough. It was brutal, but I didn't miss a mile. I never missed any yardage. I didn't miss a workout. I didn't skip anything. Once I got going, my body just felt like it was on autopilot.
Okay. Now, in regards to your training, how big of an issue was managing the life, work, and training?
Difficult. I'm also in school for my doctorate degree.
Okay. Let's add some more to the mix.
Yeah. I mean, this season's been a little difficult for me. I sold my house. I bought a house. I moved. I'm working a full-time job with call, and I'm going to school. So I took summer session 1, which was during my big build. So yeah, it was difficult. I mean, my social life is, my pain cave and going out for runs, and bikes. So if I can find someone to go ride with, that's about the socialization I have with people at the moment. Yeah, life is busy. Life is very busy. So managing training is difficult. I'm pretty happy with the fact that, I haven't missed a session. I would be more than willing to miss something else in life rather than give up training. I think training keeps me very balanced. Makes me feel like I have a sense of control in my chaotic life,
Right. Now, were there any days where you just mentally didn't want to train?
Honestly, last year I felt like I had more of those days. There honestly were only less than a handful of days, this season for this. Having those days where you just wake up and you don't want to get on the bike. You don't want to go do the run. I mean, there are days I woke up, I felt sluggish, but as soon as I get going, usually it takes me about 2 to 3 miles, and then my mind just kind of forgets about that. Kind of like when you get out there on the run, or on the bike. Yeah, it's just, you're nervous before the race starts. Once you get going, you're good. I had 1 or 2 really bad days where, bike intervals, tough, maybe 200% of FTP intervals coming up, but on a day I had 3 hours of sleep and I had to get up at 4 a.m., but, I did it. And I just think it gives you, I use those days as mental toughness days. Those are the days that are going to help you get through a race when you're in those dark spaces. When you're out there and you just don't want to run anymore because you've had a long day, those are the days that get you by.
Okay. Now, as far as your training and workouts go that you did complete, what workouts did you do that gave you the confidence to go into Lake Placid prepared?
Oof. That's tough. I always kind of gauge where I'm at, kind of by my long rides, and long runs, my long sessions to see the endurance. If I can go out and ride 100 miles and how I feel afterward, if I can go out and run 20 miles and see how I managed my nutrition, my paces, am I, negative splitting? What am I doing? How did I feel at the end? How did my body respond? I think that's important because ultimately it's a endurance. I'm training for endurance. So those short sessions and intervals, I use them to hopefully get my paces and speed. I kind of check in with myself during the long sessions. And, if I can go out there and feel sort of comfortable at that distance, then I feel pretty good.
Okay. Now, as far as going into this race, when did you start traveling to the race venue?
My heart is, anytime I can come up to Lake Placid a little early and spend some time here, I do. I got up here Wednesday night. Got a quick session in on the trainer, just, spun my legs for about an hour and a half, packed up and got out of Philly to come up here. Kind of before all the madness descended upon the town. I just got up here around 4:30. Sun was setting right over Lake Placid, sat outside, had some water and dinner and just exhaled a little bit, get myself, just I'm here, and then, not be in race mode, but just enjoy myself here.
Okay. Now, whenever you got to the race venue, as far as checking in and all the process of getting your packet and all that stuff, how did that go for you? Was it pretty simple? I know this is the 20th year that IRONMAN Lake Placid has been going on. How was the venue and the atmosphere there? Wow.
First off, the atmosphere is incredible. I think the 20th year, it was really, it was very well done. Ironman always puts on a good event. The people there were fantastic. I figured I would just check in and get it over with as soon as I got here, check that off the list. Don't have to worry about it anymore. So I was in line 9 a.m. in and out of the venue fairly quickly. It's kind of funny because a lot of the same volunteers are always here. I came up here for the half with a friend of mine. And it's always the same people. It's almost like you get to know them. So it's sort of like a reunion, I said hi to a couple people, in and out very quickly, very efficient. And, it was nice. When you picked up your packet, they actually had the 20-year, little spot, and they had all of the, finishers medals from the past 20 years.
Oh, wow.
They had all the memorabilia. So in a room with a big cutout of Mike Riley, and it just kind of showed you the progression of the race over the last 20 years, which was kind of interesting. And, it kind of made you appreciate that you were actually taking part in something that, it's like it is bigger than you. It's not just here for this race is rooted, in this is like the Ironman. So it's kind of cool. Like it's not a new race. It's not, a newfangled race. It was kind of nice to see the history of it.
Okay.
The evolution of Lake Placid was interesting.
Okay. Now then, as far as you actually getting your bike checked in the day before the race, was that a pretty smooth process?
Interesting. I had a little bit of a snafu for my bike check-in. I must have bumped my DI2 in the elevator, and my whole brake lever was totally off. It came out of the base bar entirely, just hanging on by the DI2 cable as I was going to check my bike in at 10 a.m. on Saturday. So, take a breath, ran over to the race mechanic. Thank God. So, they were there. They were able to help me. I had to drop my bike off there. Couple hours. They were great. They texted me when it was finished. So it was, it was tough. I had to really take a breath and not have a meltdown because, you want everything to be perfect. You don't want to have to worry about mechanical things. You want to be able to control what you can control and just have a smooth race. So, after I got that taken care of, racked the bike, and it's always funny to me because I just go in, I rack my bike, and I leave. I don't spend any time there. I don't really look anything over. I figure, it's my, I don't know. It's like I kind of treat Ironman like any other local triathlon. Keep the same routine. Don't get out of your routine, because when you do, that's when things can happen. You'll forget things.
Right. Now, the day before the race, are you trying to get in a certain meal to prepare you for the race, or are you controlling your nutrition through the day? What are you doing there with the nutrition?
So this year I switched up and I actually went vegetarian.
Really?
I did. So this is, it's a new season. I love meat. So to give up my red meat was really difficult. I don't know. I just kind of thought I was going to give it a shot, see how I did with it. Doesn't hurt to try it. If it was going to hurt my performance, I certainly wouldn't have continued to do it. But I had a pretty good showing at Ironman Raleigh last month in June. I came in first in the age group. So I figured it was working for me. I'm not going to test anything out. Just stick with it for now. Maybe after the season, maybe I'll go back. I'm not sure.
Did you take your slot to the World Championships then?
I did not take it. I didn't take South Africa. I was trying for Kona. I'm still trying for Kona. Next year is going to be in France. Who's to say that maybe I wouldn't like to go to France, you know? So we'll see. It's just, you know, I never thought it was in my wheelhouse, honestly. And having qualified, it was a little late to qualify, you know, to find housing and everything just would have been a little bit logistically, probably stressful. So my goal for next year is to hopefully maybe try to qualify early and secure a spot and then, you know, get on the housing, etc. But, my nutrition, I try to manage throughout the week. I try not to deviate too much, you know, definitely, you know, ease up on the fiber the day before, 2 days before, you know, switch over to white bread, which is sort of difficult. It doesn't make me feel the best. I always feel a little bit sluggish. I almost feel like it like slows me down a little bit, but, I try not to deviate, you know, I try to eat well all the time and, you know, but eating well also means like treating yourself to a piece of chocolate afterward. You know, you can't cut everything out. You know, you have to live life and enjoy yourself.
Right. Now, whenever you started thinking of laying everything out, I know you have a few different bags here for Ironman. What all are you putting in each bag the day before the race?
Shamelessly, hardly anything. Never touched my special needs bag. Don't use them. You know, I'm not stopping. I'm not stopping during the race. I'm not picking anything up. It's just not happening. It's not really in my nature. The only thing I put in my bike bag is my bike shoes, my bike helmet, which has my visor on it, and, one of those head buffs just for, hair management for the female athlete, just so that my hair doesn't get caught in my helmet. And that's it. I am fairly simple. That's it. Run bag has my shoes, my sunglasses, my hat, and my race belt. That's it.
Wow, so you're not changing or anything?
Oh, no. Less is more. I change nothing. I just go in my aero kit. And, you know, I think I threw some gels in my transition bags just so I could take them out on the run. But I swam with gels. I actually have a bra that holds my nutrition. So, I swim with my gels in there even. So it's all with me all the time. Take a gel before I start the swim. And, when I come out, hopefully get another gel in me and, you know, with a little bit of water just to give myself a little bump before I get on that bike.
Okay. Now, I know you did Lake Placid last year and you also did this year. There was a notable change to the bike course. And how much of a difference do you feel like that was to prepare for in training?
You know, it was, you know, people were talking about the change in elevation. I believe they added roughly 2,000 feet of elevation, according to, you know, the elevation maps. I didn't think about it. I mean, I trained, you know, I would do 60-mile rides with, you know, 4,000 to 5,000 to 6,000 feet of elevation. I'm training elevation. The more I can get, the better. I think the run was a big thing. I trained a lot of hills this season. I didn't really train hills very much last year. So I challenged myself to go out and run 13-mile runs with 1,500 feet of elevation. You know, it may have slowed up my pace, you know, on Strava, which, you know, every athlete wants to see the good stats there. But, you know, I knew it was for me. I knew that it was going to help my legs and get my flexors and everything that's connected to my hips stronger. And it was going to serve me well. You know, the stronger I can get on the run, I think the better off I'll be. But the bike course overall, I thought it was a good change. I really did. I enjoyed it a lot more. The white face out and back was a little difficult, to be honest. It kind of set you up for kind of a tough, coming out of white face. There's a very steep graded hill, probably one of the steepest grades probably on that course, since I don't believe that Placid has a lot of, you know, 12% grade hills or anything like that. They're fairly manageable. It's more insidious climbing. But you came out of that white face, make that turn, and it was tough. You were already starting one of those insidious climbs, and it was hard to get momentum when you made that turn. I mean, you had to come out and you were in your small ring and you felt like you weren't moving. You weren't making any headway. Luckily, that was over on the Wilmington side. So we did have a little bit of a tailwind kind of pushing us at our back, which kind of helped, as long as it wasn't pouring rain at that time.
Right. Now, as far as getting in bed the night before the race, what time did you want to try to get to sleep?
Anytime I can get into bed early, I'm all for it. So, as someone who rarely gets much sleep in general during training, I try to get as much sleep as I can. I'm not a great sleeper, but before race night, I was shooting for about 7:30, 8 o'clock to be in bed to kind of unwind. I'm an early riser. 3 a.m. was my call time yesterday, and I do better with getting up early. So it doesn't bother me, but I'd like to get to bed. I never really sleep very well night before the race, toss and turn, maybe get a couple hours of sleep, 6 hours at most.
Okay. Now, you wake up on race morning. What's your race day morning ritual before you leave your apartment, house, condo, hotel room, whatever?
Coffee first. Always have to start with the coffee. And I usually, for breakfast, I typically eat 2 English muffins with peanut butter and a banana. So try to get some calories in me. It wasn't really appealing to me yesterday, but I knew I had to get it down. I always pack everything, the night before I lay everything out. I don't really have any rituals regarding, I just try to make sure I have everything. I had mixed my nutrition the morning of. And made sure I took that with me for my bike. But other than that, that's it. It's coffee. It's, a little bit of water, hydration, get some water into me. I usually wake up feeling pretty dry. So I don't want to drink too much water. I think sometimes you drink a little bit of water, you get in that swim and it either doesn't sit well or, you run the risk of being overly hydrated, and getting in there and having some problems with your lungs. So, just try to strike a balance and go by feel, but I try to get a little water, a little caffeine, and definitely some calories.
Okay. Now, how much traffic did you hit from where you were staying to the transition?
Traffic? None.
Okay.
We were down there before transition opened. But, I wanted to get down there and make sure that it's always a lot of athletes entering into transition in the morning. And the quicker I can get in, pump my tires, and get out, the better off I am mentally. I'm in a better headspace. I switched over to latex tubes. So it's more of a concern to make sure that my tire pressure is good. I knew we were going to have a little bit of rain. I didn't want to run too high. So I wanted to I didn't want to bring, I'm a minimalist. I don't like to bring my own pump. There's plenty there. As long as you get in time before the line, get in, pump your tires, get out. And then, do what you need to do. So I usually kind of take a walk, relax myself, make sure that I'm taking in some calories and, a gel or two and just drink some water. But I kind of don't like to be around a whole lot of other athletes. I think sometimes it can get my head a little bit.
Okay. Where did you park on race morning?
So, no, I was fortunate enough that a friend had his family members drive us down there. Okay. So, we're less than a mile from the start of the race. So, we popped down there really quick. And actually, I walked home from the race afterward. Okay. Yeah. So, I think it's kind of a cool down.
Okay. Now, just a few rapid fire questions for you. What kind of wheels were you using on race day?
I use a Head 6090, the jet black with the turbine braking, which was great during the rain yesterday. Okay. I mean, it's still carbon braking, but it has a little bit of a rough surface on it. So you can use whatever brake pads you want. It chews through your brake pads, but it does do very well in the rain.
Okay. Now, how much PSI did you end up using on race day?
I used 80 in the front, 80 in the front, 85 in the rear.
Wow, that's pretty low.
Well, they hold 100 max. So it's not 120. So I went 80, 85 on latex tubes.
Okay. Now, how much do you weigh?
Roughly 125.
Wow. So you're pretty light going on that then.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I dropped a lot of weight this season. I think just from changing my nutrition, my daily nutrition, I kind of lightened myself up a little bit. I honestly, last year, I don't think I really even paid attention to nutrition. You know, I ate whatever I wanted. My first go around was I'm training for an Ironman. I can eat whatever I want sort of mentality. This season, I kind of tightened it up a little bit. And, you know, they're right. You know, it's the, you know, the proof's in the pudding. I'm starting to get results. You know, luckily I've been able to podium in every race I've completed this season. So first overall female in a race in Maryland and an Olympic, and first age group in Raleigh, and, you know, third in age group in my Ironman. So it seems to be working.
Okay. Now, what kind of helmet are you using?
So currently I'm using the Rudy, with the visor on it. It's the Boost. I like it. It's okay. I might switch after this season. It just doesn't seem to fit my head very well. I have a small head, and I think, like, with my ponytail, it just doesn't fit. I mean, being a woman, it's always difficult to find something where you can fit your hair through it.
Right. I don't have that problem, thankfully.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice.
Female athlete problems.
Well, maybe Heather Jackson doesn't have that problem either. So I don't know.
She doesn't. I noticed that today. I thought maybe there's a reason she does that.
Yeah. Wow. So you get done with the transition. You set everything up. Pretty minimalist approach to everything. Your bags are light. Everything is light. You're using all liquid nutrition. You have gels in your bra. That's what you're using for nutrition on the run. You head down to the swim start, the half-mile walk away. You get on the beach, start lining up. How is your anxiety level at this time?
It's high. It's always high. It's kind of interesting. People always say to me, "But you were a swimmer, you know," and, you know, in the pool, I mean, I'm fantastic. Holding, 118s, 119 paces. But my anxiety level for open water swimming race morning, super high. It's full contact for the first 700 yards or so. I try to decrease my anxiety a little bit. I just kind of, I'll go in for a quick warm up. For an Ironman, I don't think you have to go in and swim very long. I go in, get wet. And once I kind of get myself in the water, it's almost like my body knows it's time to, buckle down, and it almost decreases my anxiety. So I almost get in there not to, swim my arms out or get them warmed up, so to speak, but just to kind of decrease my anxiety. It's like, I'm in my element now, get in the water. I mean, Mirror Lake is gorgeous. It's clear. It's super clear. It's almost like swimming in, spring water. So to be in there, it's almost like, it kind of makes me feel a little better and decreases my anxiety. But I try to stay away from, like, gangs of people and listen to other people. I just kind of have to stay in my own head a little bit.
Now, I know this is a 2-loop course where you have to get out, get back in, and you have what they call the rowing lines on the bottom of the lake, or a little bit underneath the surface of the water, where you can basically sight off of that versus sighting for the swim itself, right?
Correct.
Okay, so where are you seating yourself in this rolling start?
I seated myself in the hour group, right at the rear end of the 1 hour group. My goal was to do an hour. I think I came out 1:04. Last year, I remember the second loop being a little difficult. I mean, my first loop I made in 30 minutes here. The second loop always tends to get a little slower. You start running into, some of the slower swimmers. It gets to be very busy out there. You have people who are really working hard to get through the swim and may need to stop and kind of, bob up and down a little bit or just take a moment, which is fine. But it really does kind of make for a little congestion. It just gets a little congested on that second loop. I would love a point-to-point swim, start somewhere and finish somewhere else and just be done with it, or have, a nice longer, but there's a lot of athletes in the water. So you kind of have to expect that. And, you're not going to win it on the swim, but you can lose it on the swim. If you push too hard and your heart rate gets too high and you just can't recover, or you have a panic attack, and it happens to everybody regardless of, ability. So I just try to stay relaxed in the swim. Don't push it. I kind of use it as a warm up, for my day, because it's a long day of racing. You have a lot of racing left.
Right. Now, walk me through the swim course for you. The gun goes off, everybody starts getting in the water, and you go. How does the first few hundred go for you?
Wow. Yesterday, I just wanted to stop, honestly. That's the honest answer. Yeah, it's full on contact. People are bumping you, you're, kicking you. It's, even though, it was interesting. Last year they started us like 2 at a time. Even though it was a rolling start, they had volunteers last year allowing 2 athletes at a time, and they would allow maybe two to go, every so often. This time it was the gun went off and you just roll, the whole group went in. So it was a little bit more body contact. The first 700 yards, it was tough. It was a tough swim. It took a little while to settle down.
Okay. Now, as far as the volunteers, did they have divers in the water this year too?
They did have divers in the water. I never saw one personally. I wasn't really looking, I still do sort of sight a little bit. I try to find someone to tuck in behind, if I can find someone who's kind of going the same speed as me, I try to. I don't look down very often when I'm swimming in the lake. I wish I kind of had seen the divers, but I didn't see anyone out there.
Okay. Now, in between the 2 loops, you get out, get back in. How big of an issue was going from horizontal, vertical to horizontal again?
Good question. It's never easy. You get in your groove swimming, you feel pretty good, and then it's almost disrupted. You have to get up, you stand up, you feel sort of dizzy, a little out of it, it's nice to see people and it's nice to have that break. But then you get back in and you feel like you're starting all over again, trying to find that rhythm in the swim. And again, you have that first 700 yards where you're just trying to get a nice smooth stroke back.
Right. Do you think to prepare for this, doing long sets with a break in the middle of the set where you get out, maybe do a few jumping jacks, then get back in would help prepare for that? Absolutely.
That would be, agree. I've never done that. I know a lot of people that do. I see them at the pool a lot. They get out, they'll do push-ups or jumping jacks or something on the deck, just to break it up. I think it would help you, honestly, just getting used to that sensation, almost like doing a brick, just feeling what your legs are going to feel like, just feeling how it's going to make you, what you're going to experience going from horizontal to vertical back to horizontal. Yeah, right. I think that would be useful.
Now, you get done with the swim. Where are the wetsuit strippers in relationship to the swim out?
So they are on either side of the swim out, I believe. I always go to the right. They do a fantastic job. Literally just rip that suit off you in less than 5 seconds.
Were they in the sand again this year?
They were. They had mats down. It's always difficult to get, the sand off of you, but it's sand from Placid. It's okay.
Gosh, because I volunteered last year, and that was one of the things I was like, well, these people are about to be on the bike for around 5 to 7 hours, and you're willing to put sand in their crotch.
Yeah, it doesn't feel that great.
Why would they do that?
Yeah, you are correct. They are based in the sand, but we had plenty of rain to wash that sand away. So yeah, it was all gone. The only thing that I would say is useful, I'm not one to pack extra things in my bag, but a towel just to wipe your feet off was great. And I don't traditionally put any towels or anything I never dry. I bike sockless for the whole thing. Even Ironman, I only put socks on for the run. I just feel like my tri shoes they just feel better that way. So.
Okay. Now you leave the wetsuit strippers and you carry your wetsuit the half mile to T1, down the hill, then up the hill, then down the hill again to T1. You get to the oval where your bike is. Last year, I was actually able to volunteer there as well for a little bit, and they actually had a volunteer yelling out numbers on the bullhorn, getting the bikes ready for the volunteers coming out. Is that the same situation here this year?
That's correct. So if I want to say, if you're fortunate enough, if there's a lot of athletes coming in all at once, I think sometimes some athletes are I don't want to say cheated of that experience, but they just can't keep up. If you go into the oval and there's not a whole lot of athletes in there at that moment, it's good. This year and last year, I was fortunate enough to have somebody bring my bike to me from the rack, so I didn't have to go to the rack.
Right. Now, I know I volunteered at Ironman Texas this year, and the official said, you can't do that here. And I was like, well, why not? I've done this before at other races. Well, that's cheating. Well, I'm like, well, that's part of the experience. That's part of what volunteers do. And I was kind of in awe about that. Now, you get onto the bike, you have a downhill to start the bike ride, a massive half-mile-ish downhill before a left-hand turn, right?
Okay. Yep. Oh, okay. Coming out of town.
Yeah, coming out of town. So are you braking really hard going down that first downhill?
Yeah, I kind of like to get on the bike and feel a little bit of speed. Honestly, I know, I've done some training weekends up here, with my coach, and I know that the advice is to stay in your small ring until you kind of get out of town, and get to that first, actually after that first climb, up, toward Keene. But I kind of like to feel the speed, especially coming, so I like to go kind of bombing down, throw the brakes on a little beforehand and just try to get aggressive with that turn. I don't know if that's the smartest thing, but it makes me feel like I'm starting out strong, and just gives me a little bit of a mental boost. Then, you come out to town and you're still in your small ring and kind of climbing out. Right.
Now, were you trying to hit a certain cadence, power, or heart rate number on the bike ride, or were you mainly going off of feel?
I am a feel athlete. I just go by feel. I have my power meter on my bike. I never looked at it once. I should go back and look at my cadence. I like to know what my cadence is. I traditionally stay around 93, seems to be my sweet spot, seems to be what I settle into. It would be interesting to see what I did yesterday. But I don't try to get caught up in numbers. I mean, focus on the race, focus on the road, read the road, and make sure you're in the right gear when you have to be.
Okay.
I think that's the important thing.
Now with feel, what kind of feel are you wanting to go off of? Are you using like your own scale of hard, very hard, hardest, very hard, I'm dying, or are you using like an RP number? What are you using?
Self-talk. I know how my body feels. I know, my coach and I go over sections of the course where I can probably push it a little bit more and get a little bit of a burn on the quads, and, where to kind of take it easy a little bit. And, and the advice he gave me was, there's going to be sections where you're going 8 miles an hour and you can't, that's why I'm not looking at numbers. Everyone's going 8 miles an hour.
Right.
Don't let it get to your head. You can only do what you can do at that moment. So I kind of talk to myself and check in with myself, and, see how my legs are feeling and see how my nutrition feels. Do I feel weak? Do I feel like I could sustain this? It's just very organic for me.
That makes sense. Now, whenever you got to the middle portion of the bike ride, a little bit past the special needs, you're changing over to your second bottle. Are you throwing away the first bottle and going to the second one? Is that a throwaway bottle, or are you keeping that bottle?
Interesting question. So I changed my hydration setup on my bike this year.
Oh, yeah. What are you using now?
So last year I was carrying 3 bottles total. This year I'm down to 2, just one between the bars and one in the rear. That's it. At Raleigh for the half, I literally had one bottle of nutrition, and I picked up a bottle of water at the first aid station and threw it in the back cage just as like an emergency bottle because it was 90 degrees that particular day. And I drank water through the aid station and relied on my bottle of Infinite, and that was it. So my plan for Placid was 2 bottles of Infinite. That's all I can hold on my bike. Drink water through the aid station, chuck the first bottle of Dead Infinite after that first loop. And if I needed to carry a bottle of water, I would pick one up, sort of like I did in Raleigh. But I drank water through the aid station, every bike station I could. I just grabbed some water. Everyone slows down through the aid stations. You're not going to win the race, blowing through an aid station and not picking up hydration. So I ended up never carrying that bottle of water. I literally finished the race with my one bottle that was empty, and that was it. I threw the other bottle away, and it was good. I mean, I thought my nutrition actually worked out well.
Okay. Now, did you have an idea at this portion of the bike ride about where you were placing up?
I had no idea what place I was in until mile 20 of the run. I had no idea. My body didn't feel great the whole race. I thought that I swallowed a lot of water during the swim. I had like a little bit of a crampy sensation in my lower stomach. It never went away. I thought maybe it would. On the bike never went away. On the run never went away. I felt like it was slowing me down. I didn't feel great the entire race. And I was shocked. There was a gentleman down on River Road right at mile 20 on my second loop. And he was from Infinite, I believe. And he recognized me and just said, "Hey, do you want to know what place you're in?" And I said, "What place am I in?" Thinking I was way back there. And he told me second. But he also told me the girl in third was gaining on me. So I would have to pick up the speed a little bit. So I didn't know until mile 20 of the run where I was standing at all.
Wow. Now, whenever you look back at the actual race on the bike, it started raining and hailing. How did that impact your mentality of the race? Did you have to use a lot of positive self-talk here? Because that could be really a bad place to go in those situations.
Absolutely. I think you would hear a lot of athletes, everyone always jokes that you're glued to the weather, a week before the race, right? I train in the rain. Last year, it was pouring rain on one of my 100-mile bike rides. I got hit by a car 15 miles into my mile bike ride. I went down. I was bleeding, and I got up and I finished the ride. Bleeding, pad on my aero bar gone. So, the Velcro and everything was just rubbing against my raw elbow that was open, and it was raining. So I just figured the rain would wash the blood away. But for me, I could have gone home. I could have gone home and maybe finished the ride on the trainer, but it was like a mental, it would have gotten in my head. So I train in the rain. I train on the bad days. When other people are just going to sit inside, on the train, I try to do every long ride I can outdoors. Heat, rain, I ran in snow, I did everything. So for me, it doesn't impact me mentally. I actually felt fairly strong mentally in the bike. I didn't notice how far the bike ride was until maybe mile 100. I was cruising along, kind of feeling sort of good. Like, I didn't want to get off my bike. I didn't have that, I just want to be done with this. Probably until mile 100. It did affect Keene. That second loop, descending Keene, was tough. It was at that point, it was pouring rain. The winds were 40 miles an hour coming out at you. And, with riding with deep rims, I was getting blown around a little bit. One of the other gentlemen in my triathlon club, he was sort of behind me. We had kind of rode the first loop fairly closely together. I turned around. I always check behind me before I go down Keene, because once I start descending, my eyes are straight forward on that road. You have cars coming in the opposite direction. So one false move and you slide over, you have an oncoming car in front of you. So it's really important to be safe and not ruin your day. But I hugged the frame of my bike with my knees and kind of figured, keep the bike underneath me. Don't let the wheels slide out to the side. And, I went down Keene fairly fast. I kind of lost my little triathlon club friend. He kind of dropped back. I think he rode it a little bit more conservatively than I did, but I just wanted to make sure I was safe, but, still stay aggressive and try to make up some time, because it was blowing out there.
Okay. Now, did you see any flats on the bike course?
I saw 2 flats. One gentleman got a flat probably less than 15 miles in.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm sure that kind of got in his head, and I'm sure that made for a long bike ride for him. It's sort of, sometimes it's like worst case scenario for any triathlete. I think it kind of breaks your rhythm and gets in your head, and you think about all the time you're losing.
Okay. How was the quality of the road?
I'm sorry?
How was the quality of the road for you?
The quality of the road this year was fantastic. They had just finished paving. Sections, Keene's always, they haven't repaved Keene, so it can get a little rough down there along that river. Everything else was fabulous. When you came out of town last year, you felt yourself coming out of town, bouncing out of town. It was a rough road, a lot of potholes. This year, smooth as velvet. They did a great job. Lake Placid did a great job of making sure everything was nice and smooth. So it was great. The road conditions were absolutely fabulous. I thought there were a couple spots that were a little rough, like the white face out and back, but everything was great. I have no complaints.
Okay. As far as the bike goes, is there anything you'd want to tell somebody to be aware of that hasn't done this bike course before?
Oof. Anything to be aware of? I think that if you're going to tackle IRONMAN Lake Placid or Lake Placid half, I think making sure that you have the legs to do the elevation, and it's not steep climbing, but learning how to use your gears, because it's not overly steep. Know when to drop. Use your big ring and just power through, and when to drop down. And give your legs a break and spin it out. I think that's important.
Okay. Now, the last mile or two on the bike ride, are you doing anything to kind of prepare to start running?
Yeah, I tried to, last year they had a no pass zone right up by the Mirror Lake Drive. So when you came around Mirror Lake, you weren't allowed to pass other athletes. They didn't have that again this year. I'm a bad athlete. I never go to the athlete briefings, so I was totally unaware. But, I typically use Mirror Lake Drive and coming back into town sort of as a time to stand up off the bike, stand up, get out of the saddle, pedal a little bit, spin out the legs, but just get the legs going, but in a standing up position, just so that, stretch out those hip flexors a little bit.
Okay. Now, once you got to T2, walk me through T2 for you.
T2 was fairly quick. I think I did it in under 3 minutes there. So it was great. Literally grabbed my bag, ran in, socks, shoes, sunglasses, hats. The volunteers were absolutely great and even put on my bib for me as I was bending over. I was so thrilled with them. They couldn't have done a better job. One of the girls I knew from from being local in Philadelphia. So it was a great mental boost to see her as I was going out for that run. I felt pretty good getting out of T2. I wasn't dragging. I wasn't dreading the run. I felt pretty solid.
Okay. What was your strategy to tackle the run course?
Oh God, keep my legs moving. Coming out of town, that first 5K is mostly downhill. It can be deceiving. I think athletes can get in trouble there. You come out of T2, you hear the roar of the crowd, everyone's cheering you on, you're going downhill, you think you're gonna, get the legs going and fly out there and put down some great fast time. I think I even did that last year. For me, the goal this year was just to kind of be steady, keep a steady pace. Don't let your legs go too much. Don't, do anything that would jeopardize your run later.
Right.
So
now, as far as the run goes, did you have an idea of about what time you wanted to finish the run in?
No, I did not. I would have liked to have seen sub 4 for the marathon, which I think I hit. I think I did maybe 3:45. Yeah. So, okay. So yeah. So I hit my goal. It wasn't, the last 3 miles, I was chugging along there till I came back into town. Those last 2 hills were, getting back into town, really put my quads, to work, and it kind of locked my quads up. I mean, I felt like I couldn't move my legs after that, but I knew the end was near.
Right. Now, as far as the run course goes, it's basically like a smiley face in a sense. You go up and down, and then on the left side there's some hills. On the right side it's mostly flat. Mostly. Now, as you're coming back into town on the left side of the smiley face, that's where all the fun hills are, basically. Whenever you're going out of transition, you're actually going down all these hills, just pounding on your legs. How was that pounding on your legs whenever you first got off the bike, basically?
Yeah, it's tough. I'm a little mindful of that. I think I guess a lot of people know, going downhill can be more difficult than going uphill. It's really tough on your quads. You just biked 112 miles. And again, I want to be kind to my legs. So my goal, the first 5 miles on the bike, I typically use to spin my legs out. I try not to push it. And that was kind of my strategy, what I had told my coach. My first couple miles, I have to approach the run like I approach the bike. I have to get my legs going. I have to relax a little bit, settle into a pace. My body will get its natural cadence and rhythm, and it'll kind of, click it into gear. But I have to be mindful. I can't go out, guns blazing, rolling downhill, pounding on those legs. Try to be a little light on your feet, be mindful, because you still have a lot of running left.
Right.
You have a marathon too.
Now, how did you know how hard to push on the earlier stages of the run versus the later stages of the run?
Yeah, my whole thing was to be sort of conservative but steady on the run. And then hopefully be able to have enough left in the tank to kind of once I got back into town, up on that little mirror lake out and back, which I think is like the last 3 miles of the race. It's about 1.5 miles in either direction. I figured you're kind of going downhill when you come back on that out and back, and, leave it all out there. Like once I got to that point, it was like, just go. Whatever I had left, I was just going to drain the tank and really put my legs, really deep in the hole. But my quads were locking up. It just, I tried my best. Those hills at the end really kind of took me out. I tried my best. I tried to kick it into high gear. I gave everything I had. I certainly don't feel bad about that whatsoever. Everything I had, I definitely left on that course in Placid. As soon as I crossed the finish line with wobbly legs, I felt I had done my job.
Okay. Now, if we take a look at the middle portion of this run, probably say from miles 13 to say 22, the bigger chunk there, did you start going into any dark places mentally?
I always do. That's kind of the area I call those middle miles. Mm-hmm. I think the middle miles are the toughest mentally for a lot of athletes. You come out, you have the first couple miles, you feel pretty good. You get them under your belt. It's, you're kind of happy you're doing something other than biking. And you're coming out of town. You have a lot of support. That all wears off. Then you go down on River Road, 13, 17 miles. You're down there. You're in the trenches. You go to a dark place. I'm fortunate, I have a great support system. She's a female pro, Holly Benner, has kind of like taken me under her wing a little bit. She gave me some great words. Like, she's in my head. She says, when the pain gets there, you just welcome it. It's there. You don't have to do it. You just say, okay, it's there, and keep going. I think if you're an endurance athlete, you have to be willing to suffer. We're kind of sick in that respect, I think. We kind of like that. We like to live on the brink of being comfortable and being totally uncomfortable.
Right.
For the most part, I think we enjoy being uncomfortable and trying to push through it. I'm not in this sport to feel good. It's a 140-mile race. It's not going to feel good. You have to get used to a level of suffering or, a certain level of discomfort that's always going to be there. It's not going to feel good. It shouldn't feel good. You're doing it right. So just kind of settle in, click off the miles, mile by mile. The aid stations every mile help. I broke it into chunks. Let's just get here. Let's just get here. 3 miles to this. Trying not to think about the miles so much, but just focus on it and almost keep my head down, look at the road and think of it and envision my training. I try to think of past training runs that I do.
Okay. Now, the miles about 20, you mentioned that somebody had told you that the girl behind you was gaining on you.
Yeah.
So how was that whenever that guy told you that you were in second?
When he told me I was in second, I have no idea what my face like. He told me the look was priceless. I'm sure I was shocked. I'm sure it was a total look of shock and disbelief. I finished 13th in my age group, I believe, last year. So to jump 10 spots, in a year, I'm super happy. Knowing that the girl was gaining on me, yeah, it kind of like it messed with my head a little bit. I believe everything that, you read about. It's all in your head. If you believe that you can do it, you can. But once you hear something like that, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes, and that's something I want to work on in the future. I always tell myself my mantra when I'm out there is run your race, even if I have success in the standings and I didn't run my race, I'm not happy,
right.
And that has before, where, I came in first, but I didn't feel good about it because I let somebody else's performance dictate my race and my performance. I should have pushed it harder. I didn't because I knew I was ahead of her and I knew she wasn't going to catch me. And so I throttled off a little bit and I wish I would have been able to see what I was capable of. So it's something I need to work on in the future for sure. But, that's the whole fun of this sport. There's always something to work on.
Right.
If there wasn't, it wouldn't be fun.
Right. So whenever she actually did come up and pass you, did you get a glimpse of her? Did y'all talk for a second? What was that like when she passed you?
There's no talking, I think, in mile 23 of a 26-mile run in an Ironman. You're just trying to push it to that finish line. I saw her pass me, obviously with the body marking, I knew that was her. My goal was to tuck in behind her and just kind of go stride for stride with her. But I think she dropped her pace down to like a 7-minute mile. We were up on we were up on Mirror Lake Drive. We were right by the lake. And we were actually coming back. I mean, I was a mile and a half from the finish, maybe, and I couldn't go stride for stride. I mean, I just got outraced, I got outraced and she was a great competitor. I mean, I can't fault her that. I can't, I'm not going to sit here and make excuses. And she was a great athlete. She did her job, you know.
Did you see her at the finish line?
I didn't see her at the finish line.
Oh.
I saw her at the award ceremony, and we had a little exchange at the award ceremony and, she couldn't have been any nicer, I mean, everybody's fairly gracious. I mean, race day is different because everybody's out there suffering and struggling, everybody's going through the same battle. You try to say words of encouragement when you can, but as the race goes on, it definitely drops off, people are just tunnel vision. But we definitely spoke this morning and, I congratulated her and she congratulated me. So it's nice. I mean, she's been in the sport a lot longer than I have. So both of them have the two girls who beat me out. And, they probably have more experience and just, more knowledge. And, there's, like I said, there's always something to learn. I have a lot to learn. So, I mean, and that's why I do it. I look forward to it. I just want to improve. Right. It's not really about coming in first or standings for me. It's just, I want to feel like I did the best race that I could at that particular time. And I felt like I did that yesterday. So I have no regrets.
Good. Now, the last 800 yards before the finish line, you kind of got ahead of everything, but no big deal. So the last 800 yards before the finish line, how was that? You're entering the oval instead of going out on the second loop. Walk me through that.
So coming into that oval is always an amazing experience. I think that's kind of one of the highlights of racing Lake Placid. It's unique here is, you see the Olympic torch lit. They had the 20 years of Placid plastered everywhere. I mean, as soon as you're up on Mirror Lake Drive and you can hear Mike Riley start calling people's names, you definitely get that I'm there. I'm home free. He's going to be calling my name shortly. That run through the oval is usually very surreal. There's people on either side. You're going down the chute. I was fortunate enough to have a couple spectators who were there watching me, some, good friends. And, one of them gave me a pat on the back and I saw Mike Riley and I just, and I had nothing left, but I wobbled over that finish line. And I was fortunate enough to have a very good friend of mine from the triathlon club volunteering and catch me afterwards. So it was great.
Wow. Now, after you crossed the finish line, what did you do next?
I went to the medical tent. I just wanted to make sure that, I was okay. I wasn't feeling hot at that point. A little dizzy. Probably didn't take as much nutrition the last couple aid stations. I probably slacked off a little bit. I should have kind of picked some more things up. And I didn't. So I knew I was going to pay for that afterward, but I just needed to sit down and have a can of Coke, and just relax a little bit.
Okay. Now looking back on it, how well prepared for this race do you think you were?
I was very prepared. I felt super prepared. I can't say that I felt that way during the race a little bit. I'm not going to sit here and say that, I was out there feeling confident the whole race. I didn't. There are moments where you think I should have trained harder. I should have, and all the I should haves run through your head, or at least they run through my head. I should have done more hills. I should have, ran more hills. I should have, did more strength training, whatever. But I don't think I'm ever going to say I feel 110% prepared for any race, because I always feel like I can always improve and do something better. So I'm never satisfied, happy with the result, but never satisfied to rest on my laurels sort of thing.
Now, what's something that you learned from this race experience that you'd want to pass on to someone who hasn't done this race before?
I would say pay attention to nutrition. I think that that's really important and somewhat undervalued. People say train with what you're going to race with. Definitely. I mean, it really does take a lot of the guesswork out of it. It's probably one of the more difficult aspects of training and racing is, ironing it all out and realizing what works for you and doesn't work for you. But I would say, put yourself in a good spot to feel comfortable. But I also would say, although it's an Ironman and it can creep into your head that it's an Ironman and, all the emotion goes through you, it's just a long triathlon. That's all it is. Approach it like you would any other race. Don't do anything different. Keep your race day routines. Like I said, anytime you deviate, I think you have, you don't feel good. Just keep your routines. Routines are important. You don't forget things, and don't let the mystique of it all creep into your head. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful place, but it's just a long race.
Right.
It's the triathlon.
For first-timers, what advice would you give them about racing Lake Placid?
Enjoy it. Enjoy every moment. I mean, if you're here and it's your first time, you're in a great spot. You chose a great race for your first race. Look around. You're on the bike. I know you're looking down. You want to stay aero the whole time. Look up a little bit, Look at the mountains. They're pretty. They're beautiful. You're down by the river with the water rushing around. You're out there with your competitors, like gain strength from like, be friendly to people. People are friendly out there, and just enjoy the experience. I mean, there's nothing like your first Ironman. Last year felt a lot different than this year. So I kind of miss the excitement of the first one.
Right. Now,
enjoy.
Okay. Now, as far as Ironman making your experience better, how could they do that?
The Ironman making an experience better. I don't know. I mean, I think they do a pretty good job. You can nitpick here and there. But I think the race day experience is actually phenomenal. I don't really have any qualms about it. I mean, if you race locally and you do some, really grassroots races, you see something like, you see some things. Ironman is pretty on their game. I thought the the course marshals did a great job. The local police, they stopped traffic when they had to. Maybe just a little bit more direction for volunteers. At some point, some of the volunteers aren't very clear as to, what the athletes need at that particular time, but that's minimal. I mean, you're there, you have, kids handing you Gatorade and Coke, and, these people are giving up their day. I mean, so the volunteers are fantastic here. Like I said, a lot of them are repeats, and you get to know them.
Right. Now, we covered a lot about your race. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I think I'm pretty good. Thanks, Tyler.
Okay. So how can athletes follow you?
I guess on Facebook you can follow me, or Instagram. So I'm Iron Mercat on Instagram, and Kathleen Murray on Facebook.
Okay. And you also have Strava?
I do have Strava, yes. And I'm public.
Nice. Now, as far as upcoming races for you, what's next?
I'm going to tackle age group nationals on the 11th of August. It'll be the first time entering. They're in Cleveland this year, so it's a little easier to get to than Omaha from Philadelphia. So pop out there, see what I can do, maybe try for a spot on Team USA. That was sort of all I had planned. Since I didn't get the KQ here, I'm thinking about jumping on to Louisville in October, kind of piggybacking off my fitness now and just extending my season a little bit. So I'll talk to my coach about that on Wednesday. I'm 98% sure I'm going there. Maybe Maryland, but I think I prefer Louisville. Okay.
Well, I only have a few more questions for you, and we'll just start with, what races are on your bucket list aside from Kona?
Roth. Roth is definitely on my bucket list. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, you think the fan and the town embraces you here in Lake Placid. I hear it's 1,000 times, amped up. Roth is definitely an experience I'd like to do. It's an iconic race. A lot of the pros go there. It's awesome. A friend of mine did Norseman. I don't know if I'm that extreme. That's a little extreme for me. Totally self-supported. But other than that, I would definitely say Roth, and I don't really I feel like, I don't have those bucket list triathlons quite yet. I'm still learning about what's out there.
Okay. Well, I only have one more question left, and that's, what's your definition of a perfect race?
My definition of a perfect race is no race. I mean, no race is ever perfect. Not to my standards. There will never be a perfect race for me. I realize this. I felt like yesterday was fairly close. I guess I measure perfect by having a well-executed race. I think execution is the big thing. If I execute when I'm supposed to, and all the times fall into place, and, I leave it all out there and I come in first, and great. That's my perfect race, is putting everything I have, squeeze the last ounce out of me, feel like I finished with nothing left and came in first and got the result. that would be the perfect race.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kathleen. I've enjoyed hearing about your race, and I really hope you the best in Louisville, and I'd love to have you back on after that race.
Great. Thanks for having me, Terry. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You have a good day, okay?
Thank you, you too.
Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you were able to learn something from today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to leave a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to see pictures from this athlete's race, learn more about who I am, what I'm doing, or be on the show yourself to share your story, check out my website at CoachTerryWilson.com. Until next time, continue the pursuit.